Welcome to Nacht Waffen Pilot, and my guest is Joseph Powell, and he's back to continue talking about his experiences in space. And the last thing we talked about in part one was pretty traumatic, and I'm not sure we want to go back over that, but did you want to pick up the story after that?
Sure. For sure.
Yeah, because they're going to all be on my YouTube, so people can watch one and then the other. So it could be very fresh for them, even though it's been, what, a month for us? So,
Oh, yeah.
So you were talking about serving in Solar Warden, and can you tell the audience what Solar Warden is?
All right. So to my knowledge, when I was in Solar Warden, the memories that I have, they were supposed to protect the planet. But from what I've heard from others that have more memories than I do, that's not all that they do. We did trade in clone slaves to Nacht Waffen. But it was mainly for either reconnaissance or technology, to my recollection. But I was told by an individual that was one of our heads that I met when I talked last, that our main mission was to protect our planet, and that was what it really was about. But that they do all the other stuff just so they can do that. Other than that, I don't know for sure. you know, I know I have memories of actually the past that. I have a memory of being on Mars, which has been talked about by I think her name's Tia. And she actually,
Tia and I have issues.
she actually spoke about me taking over the.
Tia and I have had issues. She has been quite unkind to me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Well, the things that we did to her, I mean, that I did to her personally, I understand. She was a slave who had abilities. I was actually one of the individuals that was there when we were taking that Mars base that she spoke about. I don't know if I was in Solar Warden in that memory or not. I'm assuming that I was. And I was basically given orders that we had to take over that base, and there was a group of them, a group of these slaves, and I had walked up, and she was the one who actually started talking first and tried to take over the situation for all the other people that were there. And I had basically ordered them to use their abilities, to whatever abilities they had, to basically help take over the base. And she had sat there with the same kind of, verbiage that she has even now, and asked who I was to tell them what they needed to do and why should they do it.
Yeah, that's a polite way of describing what she does. Yes.
And I told her because I thought it was quite interesting personally, because that was the first time I ever had interaction with somebody who didn't follow orders. And
well, Nacht Waffen doesn't exactly follow American military protocol. If you are speaking up because something has to be done differently, you found a real problem with it, they usually reward you for pointing out errors. So you're in the German civilization out there, you are expected to think. You are not expected to merely obey, which is a big misconception folks have about them. When I was with them, they made sure they educated me first, that because I was a 9-year-old child when I came to them,
Hmm.
and they put me through Shola and made sure I was educated, basically the equivalent of a bachelor's degree, before I became an officer. They wanted people who would think and not necessarily just follow orders.
Yeah.
Um, so the military there is a little different than American military. So
Oh
um,
yeah.
just because of that, you're expected to think. But if you disobey a direct order, you'd better have a damn good reason for it.
Oh yeah. Well, I let her know because she had asked, you know, why she should listen and why they should do what I told them, and I basically let her know because if you don't, we'll kill every one of you and replace you. um, and after that, she kind of was like, oh, you know, and I was like, listen, just do what I tell you, you know, and she did, you know, and she didn't really do it the way I told her to either. And that's when she did what she had said. Most of what she said she did, she actually did,
Well,
which
I
was quite
haven't heard
interesting.
her story because she has been so nasty to me that I've refused to listen to her videos. So you need to tell folks what happened, as if
Okay.
she had never spoken.
Okay. So so basically, after I had threatened to kill everybody that was there on the behalf of who I was following orders for, um, she had, you know, decided that she was going to do what she was told, and everybody that was there was scared, so they followed and did what she decided to do. Um, and she ended up like going up and like went up the I think she went up the ramp when she was using her abilities, and she ended up disappearing. And like we had ordered her to come back, and she didn't follow orders. And for some reason, whatever beings were in this base, they chose to leave freely, because we were going to basically wipe them out if they didn't. And they understood that, and for some reason, they ended up, you know, just having a conversation with her and leaving. That's pretty much the gist of that. I didn't really know what was going on in there, but from what she has said, she basically had a conversation with one of their leaders, and they basically decided to leave peacefully. We ended up taking over that base. She has a drawing which is on point, of what the outside looks like.
Well,
Um,
I've seen her drawing, and I have been to that base, and it does not look like what I remember the base looking like.
okay.
So,
Well, I don't know. I don't know about like the inside first per se, but I know like the outside structure looked like that from my memories. But past that, that's pretty much it. I remember being inside of the base, and there was a room that I had gotten because after we had taken the base, I had been given, I'd been like, I think like something like a promotion. There were other Germans that were there that were pissed about that. They weren't happy that I got promoted, and so as I was basically in this place that I lived at, and I would go and do whatever duties I did. I don't have memories of what I did when I was there, but I have memories of coming back to my room, and I had my own bed. I had like a kitchen area, so like if you walked in, I had my bed that was there. I had off to the left hand side there was like a bathroom area, and there was a door to lead to the bathroom, and then off to the right of the bathroom there was like a mini kitchen like setting. And I was living there, and when I got promoted I was given a gift by one of the German men. And there was quite a few of us, and they were there to basically congratulate me, but I could tell that they weren't happy about it. And they had given me a slave as a present. One of them did, but he was the one that did never liked me, so I didn't trust why he was giving me this slave. It was a female slave, and she when she was there, she was sitting. I think she was either standing or sitting on my bed. Um, and he had presented her to us, presented her in front of us to me, and basically said that she was a gift. So after they had left, I thought she was a spy. So I never really interacted with her too much, but I also, even then, I didn't agree with the slavery aspect. So I didn't I didn't want to send her back to where she was from, whatever she came from, wherever she was located at. But I also didn't want to really interact with her. So I basically just let her know, you're allowed to stay here. I won't do anything to you. Um, if you can, just keep the house clean. Not that she really needed to, my room, not that she really needed to, because it was always clean, but I was used to doing my own shit, you know. Um, but there was times where I would leave and go and do whatever I was doing. Like, I basically, it just goes black from like anytime I walked out of the room. I don't have memories of what I was doing. And then anytime I came into that room, I do have memories. So there was one time.
Just a minute. For the audience, that actually makes sense to me, because my memories were altered, where I don't see faces. They're invisible. They're like, there's not even a head there. And some of my childhood memories, I only see people from the hips down, because they figured I could identify who it was by their body shape. So yeah, they do filter your memories before they send you back.
Yeah.
And all of us need to understand that our memories have been filtered. That's an important consideration, especially when we start arguing with each other over details of things, because your memory's been filtered. You can't be sure of anything.
Yeah. So there was one time I'd come in and she was sitting on the bed. Everything was all clean and, neat and everything. And she had wanted, some kind of intimacy. And I basically shunned her, because I was like, what is she trying to, I figured that she was trying to lower my guard, so I kind of shunned her, and she didn't understand why I was doing that, and I never told her. I was just like, I just walked off and did whatever I was doing. Well, there was another time where I came in, and she wasn't there by herself this time. She was with what I remember as a private. Um, he was basically, he knew me as his superior, and he was under me, and she had brought him there, and I was like, I had walked in to my own quarters, and I was like, I was like, who are you, and what are you doing here? And she had spoke up and was like, well, she was like, I brought him here because you don't really do anything with me. She had said, you don't really do anything with me. And
so she assumed you were gay.
Yes, she's like, I didn't know if maybe you wanted to do something with him instead, and I'll sit here and watch. It's okay. And I was like, I got pissed, okay, because I just, that wasn't who I was. And
Yeah, well, there is a program that used to be called Monarch
Hmm.
that most of us have been put through, where there's a sex slave altar. And if you are not pleased with that altar, they'll find somebody that will please you. It's the programming.
Hmm.
So, as Solar Warden, you may or may not have been exposed to that. I don't know what the various factions expose their assets to, but I know my generation, everybody was put through that first.
Yeah, I know that I have like a hypersexual situation for myself, and it's leaned over into my own life, you know. And it's kind of a rough situation, and it's hard to pull away from that for myself, you know. And my wife has to deal with that and a bunch of other stuff, but you know, I digress from that. But really, it was quite an awkward situation. I was very pissed because I didn't want somebody else in my room to begin with, let alone her trying to bring somebody to, you know, that you know, I didn't agree with that kind of stuff. So I basically was like, you know, I had started going into, I was like, private, what are you doing in my room? And you know, he basically stood up straight and realized that it wasn't going to be happening that way. And I was like, you're dismissed, you know, and basically had him leave. And I yelled at her, and I was like, how dare you? Like, who do you think you are to bring somebody else into my room? You know, and she got really upset and was like, well, you know, if you're not happy with me, I'll leave. And I was like, and when she did, I got, you know, my emotions changed, and like I saw her for who she really was, and I felt bad, and I like sat down and I started talking to her. And that's when I actually let my guard down, and we had a conversation about, you know, how she felt. And she started talking about her, you know, how she wanted to be intimate with me and that she wanted to actually make me happy. And I was like, listen, you know, we don't have to do that kind of stuff to make me happy. I was like, we can if you want, but let's just get to know each other, you know. So from that point, there was another memory where I just started coming in and I would talk to her, and then I would lay down in her lap. I would lay my head in her lap. I would like sit on the bed and lay my head in her lap, and I would cry. And I started telling her some of the things that were going on that I was doing. Um, and she would sit there and just sit straight like this, and I think she just blanked it out, you know, because she would just get glazed over. Um, and you know, sometimes she would run her hands through my hair, and we would, you know, she would basically try to keep me calm. So there was at one point where the individual who brought her to me showed up, and he was very happy, and he showed up with other soldiers, and they showed up, and they basically, it was me and her, this German soldier, and a bunch of other soldiers that were there to take me. And they had grabbed me, and I had looked at her because I thought that she basically said what told on me, you know. So I was like, I basically started yelling at her. I was like, how dare you betray my trust? And you know, the German was actually quite happy about it, and he was like, well, she didn't betray your trust. And they brought the private in that she had
Oh,
originally brought in, and I was like, you bastard. And they basically drugged me, like drug me out of the room. And I don't know where they took me from that point. But whatever position I was in, he made sure that I lost that position. And I don't know what they did with me after that. Um, it was a really, really fucked up situation, but I have like vivid memories of it. And so, anyways, there was, after that had happened, the last memory I have with you know, serving in Solar Warden, was sitting in a waiting room. So no, I had walked. So anyways, I had walked through the area that they showed on Gaia with the shooting range with the
I've
plasma
seen that.
rifles. Okay. Well, all right. So there was an area. It was really stony.
Just assume I haven't seen anything, because what I found was if something didn't resonate with me, I just walked away. It was like, okay, this isn't what I remember. And
Yeah.
I didn't want someone else's memories to pop out of my mouth.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, so anyways, there's this area that was like, it looked like a cave inside. The walls were stone. Um, and there was like a ramp that you walked in the center of the room, in the center of this big room. And off to the left hand side, they had these targets that were up, that some of the soldiers that were dressed in like BDUs camo, and they had helmets and stuff, they were firing plasma rifles for target practice. And as I was walking through, I was walking with another individual who was a soldier, and this was like the end of my first 20 and back that I had with them that I remember. So I was sitting there looking at the plasma rifles, and I was like, wow, when do we get these? And he sat there and said, oh, we don't know. You know. And he made it like a jest, like, you're not gonna get them, you know, but without saying it. And
Yeah.
I was like, I was walking by, and I was like looking at, you know, because it was out to the left, so I was like looking at it, and I was like walking, and I'm like, we could have had these the whole time. You know.
Yeah. The Germans have plasma rifles, have had for a very long time, because I used them on Mars, and I left Mars in 1990. So
Oh yeah.
each of these factions has their own sets of technology, and the Germans don't trust the Americans.
See, and that's the feeling that, see, when you said that, that's the exact feeling I got when I was in that room, you know, and they were giving me, like, congratulating me, that one German officer, because he didn't like that I was moving up, you know. uh and
It
he presented that to
probably
me.
wasn't you in particular. Um,
I meant, like, just the fact that I was an American, that's what he
it
didn't like.
it was the Germans have. I don't want to go into it in this show because this show's about you, but the Germans have legitimate reasons to not trust the Americans. Not
Mhm.
not individual Americans per se, but
As a whole, as a
as
collective,
a
yeah.
whole. There have been things happen,
Hmm.
and some of them were extreme betrayal. And the American public is completely unaware of them. But there's been serious things go down. And I feel, based on, okay, I was taught in Shola on Mars, and on Earth, I've done the research to see if it was objectively true or if it was German propaganda. And I have found that what I was taught in Shula on Mars is 90% objectively true. And so some of the things that I've been able to verify through internet research has been shocking, the things that have gone down. Um, and I don't blame the Germans for not trusting them. And I'm saying that as an American here. I don't blame them. They
I
have
don't trust, from personal experience, I don't trust any of them, period.
um
That's my
I
own personal opinion.
when my memories were reactivated, I didn't trust even my memories because I knew they had been filtered. That's why I've done a lot of research to see if this is what others are understanding, whether the stuff I was told about Earth was objectively true or not. And I have this other problem that I'm translating from German into English, and I don't speak German very well.
Mm-hmm.
So my memories are in Schwabish,
Mm-hmm.
Swabian German. They're not even in standard Earth German, like they speak in Berlin. It's a dialect. So my memories I'm hearing are a dialect of German, and I'm having to translate that into American English and then do the research to find out whether they were true or not, or if I was just fed propaganda. And I'm comparing what I was taught there with what I was taught on Earth in California. Basically the same time frames. And I will say that what I was taught on Mars is 90% objectively true. What I was taught in California is only 40% objective truth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh my God. And it's even less now when I look at textbooks being used by children. I have grandkids. So I see some of their books and I'll look through their history book and go, oh my God. So, a lot of that plays into it. So I can't even talk about real history without people freaking out because they've never heard it. They think
I've watched you talk about it, and I've watched how people react to you, which personally I think does an injustice.
Yeah, especially when I'm talking about 3D Earth history, I'm using 3D Earth references. This is verifiable. It's not something I'm pulling out of my ass.
Mm-hmm.
So it is what it is, and people freak out. So, but yes, the Germans in space have legitimate reasons for not trusting any American faction.
Yeah.
Now, how they treat individuals who are Americans is another matter. That may be based completely on their personal prejudices. Because just like everyone else, Germans in space are individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are assholes.
Not all, but yeah, there are some.
I have an alter still out in space who is serving under one of those assholes. And I have abilities in space, and I blew up his head one day, picked up the pieces, put him into regen. It wasn't my intention to permanently kill him. It was my intention to make him afraid of me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and it worked. He jumps every time he's around me now. But he stopped ordering me to do things that were insulting and illegal. So,
well, anyways, I was walking through that area, and they had presented it on Gaia where they showed, that area, and then they showed a separate area which was like a meeting room, and then, but the place that they missed is the hallway that's in the middle between the meeting room and the office where you go back to the individual to sign your paperwork if you want to re-enlist. Okay, so we walked through there, and he had me basically wait in this waiting room, this hallway. The hallway was set up. There was a secretary that wore, basically, she looked like she was in the Navy. She had like a Navy secretary garment dress, almost like the 50s or 60s version. It was kind of weird. It looks like they haven't really changed much.
They haven't
from
done that in a lot of ways.
So it looks like they're dressed like they used to, like the women used to in World War II. And she was sitting there, and there was two soldiers. There was a black soldier and a white soldier. The black soldier was on the left-hand side of the door. So if I was facing it, it was my right-hand side, and on the left-hand side was the other soldier who was a white guy, and from their direction, he was on the left, the other guy was on the right.
Don't
So
confuse me.
sorry. So I was sitting there and I was like talking to the secretary, and I was like, I'm finally done. I'm finally getting out, I was totally stoked, I was like, I'm finally finished. I was like, what are you up to? How are you? I'm like, I was talking like everything was peachy, peachy and great. I was finally getting the fuck out of this shit.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, she looked at me and gave me a look of, oh, here's another one,
Yeah.
So she was sitting there and she had gotten on the phone because they had the regular old school telephones, the ones that have the numbers normally, and you pick it up and there's a cord that connects and you talk on it and then you hang it up.
When you say phone, that's what I think of.
Yes, like it wasn't the one where you
Oh, it
not the
wasn't a
older one.
dial?
No, it was like they had numbers on it.
Okay, they had the buttons. Okay.
It was like the box one, the box looking kind of one that they normally show in like movies for like offices and stuff.
Okay.
So they had that one, and she was on the phone and she was talking, and then she hung up and she said, he'll see you in a few minutes. As soon as he's ready, to see you, I'll notify you, basically. And I was trying to talk to her, but she was very like like the coldest shoulder you could ever give somebody. She would smile and be like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I sat there and I was like, okay, well, and then just sat there quietly for, it had to have been like 10, 15, 20 minutes, and all of a sudden, you know a buzzer, some kind of buzzer went off or something like that, and she like picked up the phone and was like, oh, okay, set the phone down and was like, he's ready to see you. And the soldier that was on the right hand side from my viewpoint had leaned over, turned the door handle, and opened the door inwards. Okay. And I had gotten up, you know did my salute, basically saluted them and walked in, and as I walked in, they closed the door behind me. There was an individual that was in kind of like the military garb that you see now. Like it was the almost like the army version though, for some reason. And
That's surprising because the Navy is who runs it out there.
yeah, but I don't know if I was in space or not at the time. Like I felt like I was in an underground base of some sort, because they were dressed like in the lighter digital camo that they have,
Okay.
that you
So
see
you
on
got
them.
time traveled.
Yeah, so they were dressed in like the lighter digital camo that they have now, that they show for like all the regular military and stuff. It's like a light
Okay.
greenish, grayish kind of color.
Okay.
Anyway, so he had stood up. I saluted him. He saluted me, and then he went to go sit back down in the chair. He's like, have a seat. There was two chairs, and they were like the wooden regular chairs that you have in waiting rooms, like at the dentist office, or
Yeah.
And so I pulled out the chair and I sat down, and he started talking about how I was doing, and how I felt about, maybe re-enlisting. And he had like a stack of paperwork that was like this freaking tall, you know, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I was thinking about it, and he was starting to tell me, well, so far you've accumulated about, like, I think it was either 446,000 or 464,000, and those are the numbers that keep popping up. Um, and he was like, and he basically was like, you've made almost half $1,000,000, during your service. And
Have
this
you
is
ever seen any of that?
not a fucking penny, not a fucking penny, zero,
Yeah.
zero. So he was saying, well, you made all this money. When you go back, your family's going to be happy, but you could make more. And I was like, and he was like, how about returning with, say $1,000,000? I mean, how is your family going to feel, about that. You know, you could take care of all your family. And I was sitting there and I was like, I was thinking about it, you know, all the shit I did. Like I have memories of just thinking. I don't remember what it was, but I remember thinking about the horrid shit I was doing. And I was like, but we already have a group, but we already now have a group in space, you know? So what now we call Space Force was just coming to fruition when I
Well,
was being re-enlisted and we knew about it. I
Space
don't remember.
Force isn't Solar Warden.
Yeah, I
Space
know.
Space Force is what Corey Good called Earth Defense Force,
Yeah, see,
and it's
I never
Air
had,
Force. But
yeah, I never had,
the real space programs are all done by the Navy.
yes, I never knew the actual name. We never spoke of the name, but we knew of them. And they were the American military version in space. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the way that I knew it. Okay. So we knew about them and them being in space. And I sat there and I brought up, well, you know, why do you need me to re-enlist? They're already out in space now. What do you need? Why do we need to do it? And we had talked, you know, in depth about, well, they're separate from us. And
That
then
matters.
on top of that, then we talked, but I was like, yeah, but we spoke about whoever the president was. We never named him, but whoever it is worked for Solar Warden and does their bidding. And it doesn't even matter who the president is, by the way. He made that clear when we were in the conversation.
Oh no, it doesn't matter who's the president. They're all puppets.
Yeah, because I had sat there and I had said, well, you know, we got the president, we got our president. And I said, our president, we got our president in office. And he sat there and said, well, it doesn't matter who the president is.
No, it doesn't.
And I was like, I
I
just sat
said
there
that
shocked.
and said that and said that and said that, and people do not hear it because they have it in their head that the president runs the country, and he doesn't. He's a puppet.
They made it very clear. I mean, just look at the last one, man. He couldn't even talk anymore. They took away his right to speak. You
Yeah,
know, you think the president's in power? He ain't. He
yeah,
can't even get people to follow orders.
yeah. We have
But that's
not
neither here
had
nor there, because I know you don't want to go into like political stuff on your show. So, but
we
that was
we
in the
have
memory.
not had a real president since under one definition of it, Kennedy was probably the last one.
Yeah, and it was
And
his.
under a different definition of it, Ulysses Grant was the last one. So
Mhm.
Ulysses Grant was who turned the country over to the corporations, and America became a corporation instead of a republic. And
Mhm.
and yeah, folks, you can look that up. It was in
Yep.
1871. And when Kennedy was shot was when the cabal took over. And we have not had an honest election since. We have not had a president who was actually in charge of diddly squat since. They have all been puppets. So politics doesn't matter because you're not voting for who's going to be in charge. You're voting for who's going to be the face on the pictures. It's
Yeah.
irrelevant. And that's why I don't talk about it on my show. And I try to get my
Mhm.
guests to not talk about it on my show because SSP, the secret space program, and all the black ops related to it are completely separate from politics
Yep.
and from religion, guys. These
Yep.
are real 3D physical programs that are really happening to real people. And the
Yeah.
whole point of my coming forward was to stop the CIA from kidnapping children for these programs. I mean, regardless of what your religious beliefs are, regardless of what your political beliefs are, these are real things that really need to be stopped. And as much as I believe that the political apparatus is impotent, under the law, Congress has oversight of the CIA. So, write your Congress critter, demand that they investigate the CIA for human trafficking. Because this is just part of the problem.
Yeah, but we already know that they'll just sweep it under the rug, or they'll let the lowest guy fall for it, take the fall and blame it on one person.
Well, I've heard a lot of stuff over the last 5-6 years about the pedophilia thing.
Yeah.
And I would very much love for all pedophiles to be held accountable.
Yes.
But the truth of the matter is that the only people who ever go to jail are the witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a perp, it's somebody's weird uncle. It's not the person in charge who's trafficking them. So
And gets them to do it.
until that is addressed, and I've heard a lot of stuff over the last 5 years about children being rescued from underground military bases. Number one, if they're military bases, they ain't going to be rescued. Number two, where are all these kids? If you've rescued 40,000 children, there should be 40,000 children running around on top.
They're in space. You'll never see them. That's what keeps aligning with the same thing that you're talking about. They're in space and you're never going to see them.
Yeah, well,
and once they're healed, they'll come back. I'm like,
yeah. The insanity gets so thick that they don't listen to the real issue, which is the CIA is kidnapping children to man these programs, and that they keep taking those same people throughout their lives. I've done 91 trips with the Germans, 45 with a mercenary group called Kruger, plus at least 600 trips working for the CIA. Now, the ones for the CIA are from 1 to 5 years instead of the 20 and back with Kruger and the 60 and back I do with the Germans. But, you're still, I have literally years of every Friday I woke up with. Every Friday night I would go to sleep and have a dream of being a mermaid in a kelp bed. Can we say cover memory?
Mm-hmm.
I was taken every Friday night for 3 decades. This is not something they take you once when you were a kid and it's over. This is something, if you've got an ability they want, you are taken over and over and over and over and over and over until you reach the point where you're ready to shoot yourself in the head just to make it end. And at that point, they take your body and dump you in a regen tank and bring you back. There is no death to end this.
Either that or one of your altars takes over and makes sure that you stay alive.
That too. And I shift altars during my interviews, and some of my audience have watched me long enough that they watch me shift and they're going, "Oh, there she did it." And I'm like, "Oh God." So it's this is the stuff they do. And so who's president doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, last summer during all of the election campaigning, I was calling them Tweedledee and Tweedledum because, you know, there was no difference. They were both accused of messing with kids. Trump was facing charges for raping a 13-year-old whenever he was elected, and that disappeared. You know, so they were both accused of molesting children. They're both accused of taking bribes from Russia. They're both accused of corruption in business. They're both accused of not paying their employees. They're both accused. There was no significant difference between them, except that one was a career politician and the other one was a career real estate developer. That's it. But they're both ultra rich, and neither one of them gives a shit about what the common person is doing. And until the common person understands that, we're just going to have rinse and repeat with a different face.
Yeah. But anyways,
That's
all
that's why I don't talk politics.
No, I agree with about 99% of what you just said. So trust me. But anyways, beyond that, so that was part of the conversation, and I did try to omit that when we posted it on the secret space program group that you're an admin on, specifically because of that. And I didn't want people to be like, well, who is it? Because I don't fucking know. I just know that whoever it is, they serve Solar Warden and they do their bidding. And their bidding is kidnapping fucking children and using them in programs. So if you think they're good, they're not. Whoever was theirs. So after that, I was like, okay. And he had taken the paperwork with 2 fingers on the top and then his 2 thumbs on the back and pushed it forward nice and neat in front of me and put a pin and down. It was a black pin and it had gold trim on the very top, and it was a cap one, and then it had like gold trim, to turn it, and he said it there on the paperwork, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to read it. So I tried to read the documents, and I got a few pages in, and he stopped me, and I couldn't really read. Like, I wasn't at a normal reading level either, by the way. I could read like I was still a kid.
Yeah.
And I've always had a problem reading, not now, because I keep doing it until I was able to teach myself to read better and understand words and stuff. But I really couldn't understand what I was reading. And at that point, I started thinking, why can't I understand this? And that's when he interjected and was like, you already know what's in it. You've already been through it. You already did, 20 years, just sign it. And I was like, at that point, that's when I stopped and I said, you know what? I just want to read it. And he said, you already know what's in it. You're just going to waste time. And he was like, I'm busy. I'm too busy for you to sit here and read this whole thing. Just sign the documents and let's get on with this, or don't.
For future reference, if they don't want you to read it, don't sign it.
So I sat there and I put the pen down back on the paper because I had lifted up the pen, to read it. I had taken the pen and put it back down on top of the stack of papers. And I took my fingers and I shoved it forward because he frustrated me at that point. And I said, you know what? I'm okay. I'd rather not. And he started to stand up. And when he did, and this is where I think I have a lot of problems remembering faces in people now, and like names to faces, because I tried to read his mind because I didn't like the way the situation was going, and I wanted to know why. Bad decision. It was a very bad decision.
Uh-huh.
So there was like, if you want to get a visual of what happened when I tried to read his mind you, he had known that I was going to do it before I did it. And he looked at me and said, Joseph, don't do it. Don't do it. And I was like, why don't you want me to know what's in, what I'm signing? And I was like, and I just sat there and tried to force my way into his mind. And right before I did it, he basically hit a buzzer that was on the table, like that was underneath the table, and it called in the two soldiers that were outside, and they ran in. And I didn't even realize that they were running in until they already had me on one arm and the other had the other arm. And I started forcing my way in and realized that I was never going to get that money. He knew that it was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And I got images of his wife, of his home. He had a very big, nice home. It was like a nice, large white home. His wife, she was a white woman with blonde hair. Um, it was like an image of her smiling at him. And all of a sudden, it was like there's this video. So like on James Rink's show, he had this video for one of his things where it had a guy that had heads popping out, and he was with his kid in this dirty motel, and he starts scratching his face, and then like these cops bust through the door, and he basically throws one of the cops to the door or through the wall and crashes him out, and then the cop goes to shoot him, and the kid has a similar ability and tries to stop him with his mind, and he hits the kid and knocks him back into the chair. So that's that's the way it went down for me. As they were trying to get ready to hold me down, he had done something that knocked me back into the chair, and like I got really woozy. And that's when the soldiers had grabbed me up and finally got a good grip on me. I couldn't even move. They had like superhuman strength.
Well,
And it freaked me out that they had that, because
you're not dealing with normals.
yeah, I didn't even know that that was possible either.
Okay.
And I had sat
The,
there and looked at
the
him, and he was like,
super soldier community overlaps with ours, and they are those people. They are genetically modified, they are enhanced, they are superhuman. And even when they're on Earth, they have superhuman abilities that they have to control, and they have really, really high aggression levels that they have to control. And there's their community started before ours did.
mm-hmm.
So,
So
yeah, super
when they
soldiers
grabbed
are
me,
real.
yeah, when they grabbed me, like I couldn't move, which made, like I was thinking, like, holy shit, these people are strong. And he started speaking to me because he read my mind, and he started speaking outwards aloud, and he said, "Did you think that you were the only one with abilities?" He was like, "Who do you think trained you? Who do you think?" No, he said, "Who do you think trained the people who trained you?"
Yeah. And
And
I
he
was
grinned
sitting
at
here
me.
smiling because in my faction, I was part of the people who had the abilities that were training others.
Hmm. And when he did that, I wanted to go back into his mind. But at that point, there was like this barrier, this like mental barrier where I couldn't. And he picked up this tool that looked like a hammer, okay, but it wasn't. It had a flat end. And they show an image of it, by the way, you know, when they have Jason Rice's testimony. And it had a triangle on the back, you know, and it was like a flat end on the bottom end, and then a triangular thing on the back. It was weird. It stuck out, by the way, when I walked in. It was the weirdest object I had ever seen, that I remember ever seeing. And he had picked it up with his right hand, and he had looked at me, and he was like, he said, you shouldn't have done that. And then like tapped me on the head, but it was like a featherish kind of tap, but it knocked me back unconscious. Okay. And when it did, I remember coming to, sitting in the same chair, not knowing how I even got in the room, thinking that maybe I went into one of my altars and then came back out. Okay.
Probably.
Because I remember shifting altars from time to time, like when I was in that area when I saw the earth get burned up and shit, you know, and I knew about him, you know. So I sat there and I was like kind of hunched back. But before he had hit me, when the guards had grabbed me, I just want to go back to this. I had looked over at the black soldier, and I was like, you know, I tried to basically get him to understand that all of it was a lie, you know, because I looked over at the other guy and read his mind, and he was just the white soldier that was there that had grabbed me. He was order following. The other one thought for himself to a certain extent, and I could tell. So I had let him know. I was like, they're using us. They're doing it again. We're gonna be this. You know, I basically was telling him that we're fucking slaves. You know, well, we're all slaves this time.
Everybody out there is a slave, whether they're called a slave or not.
Yep. And he looked at me and he kind of tilted his head like he was thinking. And the person that was in charge looked at him and said, he's lying. He'll kill us all, you know? and that happened right. That was what he said. And then he just snapped out and went back into basically order following mode.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when he picked up the hammer and he was like, you shouldn't have done that, you know? And he was like, and then smiled and then tapped me on the head. And that's when I basically went back. And then I ended up coming to, and I didn't remember any of that happening. Mm. And we started a conversation, and I was basically like thinking, how the fuck did I get here? But okay. So what are we talking about, you know? And I knew that he was in charge. I knew that he was over me. And like, then it goes black from that point, and I don't remember anything after that.
So
I don't even
get
know.
You to sign the papers?
Yeah. I don't know if they got me to re-sign the papers or not. But that's the last memory I have for being in Solar Warden. And
the next Nacht Waffen you don't sign papers for.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
You're just there until they release you. And in my case, the first trip, I was with them for 50 years, and after that, it's been 60.
So after that, the last thing I remember from that point on was it was pitch black, and I started having flashes of, you know, when I was wearing the VR goggles that I had, which are now coming out. And it's freaky to watch kids put them on, and like they're all sitting there giggly and happy about it. And it's like, you don't understand where that technology came from and what they're going to do for it, what they're going to do with it, you know? And I'm like watching it happen in real time now, and I'm like, holy shit. And then they have them on people in the military, you know? So
yeah, I know what I had, and I'm watching Elon Musk trying to convince people it's a great idea. And I'm at home, I'm screaming, that moron. But yeah, the mercenary group Kruger is what Star Trek based Borg on. They are so enhanced with mechanicals that you can't even see the person underneath anymore.
See, I don't remember being in, like, I don't have memories of being in a robot body, but I have, I
the
resonate.
The Kruger people are still humans. They're just enhanced.
I resonate with like being in a complete metallic body where I don't have feelings, like touch. It's not the same.
I have one altar that I have woke up as her. I had memories of knowing James Rink in space. And so I agreed to do a regression with him so that he could have an artist draw a picture of him. And we did eventually get the picture. And it does look like how I remember him from there. But the process of the regression linked me to that person, for lack of a better term. The altar that served with him is in a robot body, but still has a human brain. And she literally pilots a shuttle between the moon and Mars on an endless loop. And so
It's gotta suck.
um, when I wake up as her, and I call this bleed over because I'm there, I'm watching through her eyes, I'm hearing through her ears, but I cannot affect any of her actions. And this is like the old CB technology where you'd be talking on your radio and your neighbor would hear it on their TV and they couldn't turn it off. So that was called bleed over. So I'm using that word for this phenomenon. But I get bleed over from different altars who are currently in service. And she's one of them. So I know from this the basics of what she does. I don't know the day-to-day details, but I know the basics because I get bleed over from her. And so if you ever have regression hypnosis, you need someone with enough experience to be able to make sure that when you're done, you're actually disconnected from that part of yourself again, so you don't have bleed over. And you also have to have all of the omega programming turned off. Because I don't know about the newer people, but the folks my generation, every altar has omega programming that if it remembers, it will self-destruct the body. And I have 2,200 altars. So it has been a bit of a trip.
Well, like I've noticed since recently, since I've been trying to like put together like photos and stuff of what it looked like in my memories, I've been having massive headaches, and I mean massive. And it's gotten to the point I have to take like Tylenol and shit, you know, and just try to stop thinking about it, you know. So I don't know if it's like something that's there or not, that's, you know, hurting my brain or hurting me when I think about it, or what it is specifically, or if it's just pent up memories that are trying to come to the surface or not. But it's the same kind of pain that I had when I was a kid, when I first came back and had flashes of all these memories flood through.
Does it get to where it will basically knock you out, where you have to go to sleep?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. I have to deal with that sometimes when I'm trying to put together, like when I know I'm going to be interviewed by someone who wants something in depth rather than someone who wants, oh yeah, I went to Mars.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I've had maybe 50 people interview me that all they wanted was, oh yeah, I went to Mars and we did battle and we went bing, 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 bing. And the truth of the matter is that isn't what I talk about. I talk about CIA and how they kept me and raped me as a child. And how the public needs to do something to stop that because it's still ongoing. And as I say this, last week I was contacted by a family with a 4-year-old boy who is talking about that he refuses to go to sleep because he doesn't want to go back into space.
Mm-hmm.
So all of you people that are telling me, well, you're old and that stopped happening, I got news for you. It hasn't. It's ongoing and ongoing and ongoing and ongoing, and it will continue to be ongoing until the public makes it stop.
Put it this way. I was going to work one day because I worked really early in the morning and I was tired, and I had passed out on the freeway. Okay. Driving on the freeway. And I came to because the side of the truck, I had hit the speed limit, and I had just missed hitting the cement wall to a drop off. By the way, it was like it was crazy.
Where
Barely
I
missed.
live, we don't have barriers. If you're going off, you go off.
Yeah,
I live in the mountains. You go off, you go down a 200-foot cliff and end up rocks along the way. So yeah,
I tapped the speed, the fucking shit that shows the speed limit. I hit that with the side of the truck, and then went down the dirt area for the center divider. And when I was going, I think like 95 at that point. My first reaction was to slam on the brakes. Bad idea. I hit the brakes,
idea.
and it turned the truck to the right.
Sideways.
And it went, I let off the brakes so I didn't flip because I felt like it was going to flip. So I let off the brakes and I went across the freeway. Luckily, nobody was near me at the time. There were cars that are off in the distance that watched it happen. And I basically went straight, and I didn't know where I was, but I felt like I was going to basically go off a cliff or something. So I just started, I started praying, but I wasn't praying for myself. I just wanted to make sure that everybody else that I knew was taken care of. And I basically made peace with dying at that point. When I did, something took over and spoke through me and said, your mission isn't complete yet. I had no seatbelt on.
I've had that told me too. Yeah.
I had no seatbelt on. I jumped over this dirt pile and I hit a brick wash. And there was a big, humongous wall with other houses that were beyond that. And I hit it so hard that it turned the truck to the left, and I broke the axle of the truck, smashed the whole front end inwards, and didn't go through the window. I bent the steering wheel out of place and broke the seat I was in. And the doors, the people that took the truck couldn't get the doors open. I was able to open the door and get out and crawl.
Well, we're back from the interruption.
All right. So I ended up crawling out of the wash and everything. But they ended up taking me to the hospital. Didn't find anything wrong with me. I had like some spasms because of, just a shock that I went through. But the airbag went off after the crash.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Luckily, I didn't hit. I don't know what happened. Like, I'm surprised because I've seen where they say, like, if you hold it the way that I held it, that it would break your arms, but it didn't break my arms. The people that got there, the cops and stuff that were there, were like blown away that I even survived that crash. They couldn't get the doors open on the truck. When they took it to the place to the junkyard, they still couldn't get the doors open.
How did they get you out?
I got myself out. I started seeing smoke. I didn't know if it was fire or what. So it was, come to find out, it was the radiator hitting the engine that was hot, and it was basically creating smoke. So I thought it was fire, So I fucking forced the door open and got out and then slammed the door shut. And then basically went to the front to see if there was a fire. Couldn't really see it, but didn't know for sure. So I started climbing out of the out of the wash. And then some guys that were in the vehicle that watched me go across the freeway the wrong direction had pulled over to see if I was alive.
Good.
Mind you, here's the fucked up part. So they were scared that they would get arrested because they weren't even here legally. So they were going to leave me there in the desert. They had called the cops, but they were going to leave me there by myself. And I got really scared. Another random guy showed up and stayed with me until they got there. Those two guys took off, and I basically was laying there, and I was more worried about the sweater that I was wearing because it was my wife's sweater. And they had to cut it with scissors and shit, even though I was like, I'll take it off, don't cut it, but I ended up having like a little bit of spasms in my back, but nothing too much. And I think it was just from whatever took me over, I'm assuming it was an altar, possibly,
Yeah,
but whatever it was, they were really strong, and I survived that shit. I never really talked about that aspect until now, with my own mom. I left that out because I was like, how am I going to explain that to her, and it was her truck that I was driving, so that was a crazy instance of me almost thinking I was going to die and I wasn't allowed to. Basically, I told, your mission isn't over, and I'm like, and I'm sitting there still trying to figure out what the fuck is my mission.
I've noticed they have a tendency to say, well, your job's not done yet, but they don't tell you what your job is.
Yeah, I'm like, what the fuck's my mission? You bastards, like, tell me, So my mission is to do what I'm doing to stop the taking of children, which aligns with what you're doing, and that's why, I like coming onto your stuff and talking to you and stuff, So that was just one aspect. So anyways, that was like way later on in my adult life. But anyways, I was brought back, and I had flashes of what I went through with the VR of being pushed off a cliff, drowning in the ocean and stuff like that, start rapidly going through my mind. And I was like basically moving like this, and then I came to and I was floating in the air. Now, mind you, when I first walked outside of the trailer that I was staying in, that's what I wanted to do, was fly. So I'm sitting there and I start realizing I'm afraid of heights. And I'm like hovering in the air, and I was thinking that I was flying, and I was above the top of the trailer, like not above the trailer, but off to the, off in a little bit in the distance, about maybe 12 feet or so, give or take. But I was above where the roof of the trailer would have been had it been underneath me. So I start freaking out, and I start moving side to, to the left, to the right, and all of a sudden I'm like swerving.
Or coming out of the trailer.
What was that?
Was this a dream sequence, or was this actual?
No. This is actually happening. I literally woke up, and so I started moving back and forth, and all of a sudden I fell. Okay. And when I first fell, I hit the balls of my feet, which sent a shock up the back of my calf. So I knew I was awake at that point, that it wasn't a dream. Because at first I thought I was a dream, I'm like, holy shit, I'm really flying. And oh, fuck, oh shit. I started freaking out because I was afraid of heights. And that's when I started freaking. So when I hit the balls of my feet, it shot up pain through the back of my calves. And then I fell back onto my tailbone, and it shot pain up my back. And as I fell back, I scraped my hands on the dirt, because I lived in the desert out in Sky Valley, on Tammy Ram Road. And I basically got rocks, like little rocks and dirt in my hand, and I cut open my, little parts of my hand, and I had dirt in them. So I went like this, and I was crying. I started crying and tearing up because it was very painful. And for some reason, I felt something coming from the right hand side upwards, some kind of feelings of some sort. And I had stopped doing what I was doing, and I looked up, and there was a craft, a UFO craft. And I was like, oh shit, I started going, oh fuck. And then I felt this feeling, this emotion coming from the craft of, oh shit, he saw me. Like that was the kind of feeling I got. And of, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? So I was sitting there looking at feeling that emotion, and then looking at the craft, and I had not felt that kind of anything ever. And I was like,
what did the craft look like?
So it was like, how they have regular UFO craft that they show that the little green men get out of and shit. So it looked kind of like that. It was
shape.
Yeah, it was in that shape. Oh man, I can't remember. It was like a not like a circular sphere, but like if you looked at the Roswell incident, how the craft was, I can't remember what the name of the shape is specifically, but it was kind of like that. And it had like a metallic look, and it was like grayish steel kind of, and the bottom of it had like these round things, and then the top of it was covered in like a round like a half sphere, and it was up like this with the bottom showing towards me. And then when it realized that I saw it and it was freaking out, the whatever was inside, I don't know if it was a human or if it was an ET or whatever the heck, it started leaning forward as if it was trying to get a better look at me, and tilted forward. And I started crying because I got scared, and I started begging for my life. And I was like, I'll never say anything. I swear. I'll keep my mouth shut. I swear to God, please.
That promise.
Yeah, well, I kept it for 17 years.
Wow.
The first person I told was my wife, and she didn't believe me. And, I told my mom, and she didn't believe me until we started having phone conversations, and I would text her to stay silent. And when I told her that I was going to hang up, just to stay on the phone line, and she heard people hanging up their phones, hanging up a phone on the same line, or coughing. And then I started sending her images of beings that are cloaked, that are in my house, or that I can pull out, or craft that fly around me. And now I can actually see them in their cloaked state, which is crazy. I can see the vibrations of their cloaking devices in daytime.
Okay.
So I started sending my mom these images, and now I can't even send video via text message anymore. If I try to send a video, like a normal video that you could send with a text message, it comes up as an error. And depending on how many pictures I send, they'll come up as errors too.
I've never tried to do that. There's a lot of things that Facebook doesn't allow me to send.
Yeah, I actually, like on the secret space program, you can go look. I posted a video on there where it was like a short video, because I was able to, if I do like a less than a 3-minute video, it'll let me send it, on Facebook. So I did like a 3-minute video where I captured one of the craft hovering in the air, and then took a picture of that video, of that craft on the video, and zoomed in to show the craft where there's nothing beneath it, and it's just sitting there in broad, in the middle of the night. I pointed out it was there for 3 hours. Okay. I pointed it out to 3 different people, and they sat there and looked at it. And it's like, when you have like Tompkins, when he talked about the Battle of LA, you know, where the UFO was there and shit, and everybody was standing out watching it. It's kind of like that scenario where people are looking at it, and then all of a sudden they just, oh, and just walk off, you know?
Yeah, people do that.
So, I mean, but yeah, so I mean, like, this stuff really happens.
Sometimes it doesn't even register on their brain because they don't believe in it.
Yeah, they didn't believe me at first, and I was like, look at it, just stare at it. And it was really close too. And they were like, holy shit, and kind of got scared. And then they got glossy-eyed after about 4 or 5 minutes, and then wandered off back on foot wherever they were going.
The glassy-eyed, I'm real familiar with
But anyways,
that reaction a lot.
so after I begged for my life, for some reason it felt like I got an emotional feeling from the craft of, okay, and like, he's not going to say anything, you know, and like a sigh of relief was what I got, a sigh of relief. And the craft basically tilted up this way, and then started floating off, you know, and then this was broad daylight, started floating off, and then all of a sudden it just disappeared after it got to a certain point, upwards into space, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm standing there, and I'm like, steer kind of teary-eyed, and I'm like, oh, thank God, you know, like, you know, I'm like, I'm alive. They didn't, you know, I'm okay. And at this point, I didn't remember any of the shit I just talked about. Okay. So I just saw the craft, and I was scared because I was like, you know, like, maybe they were trying to really take me. This was a bad idea to come out and ask for that. Because I asked to be taken. So I don't know. Huh?
Why?
Well, I don't know if it was like programming or what, but I explicitly stated things in order, and they happened, and I was taken in that order. So I had been, like I said, I was playing a Sims game. A UFO came across on the screen, and I was tired of being on Earth, and I wanted to go into space, and I wanted to do something because I had a lonely and boring life. Like, I lived out in the middle of nowhere. I didn't have any friends. My parents were always gone to work, so I was normally there by myself. I mean, at that point, my dad had left, and, you know, I moved to a different separate property and shit. So I was basically there. My mom was off at work doing whatever she was doing, and I was just basically there by myself. So I felt that, hey, you know, if there are, you know, aliens, then come and pick me up and fucking do something, because I'm tired of this shit, you know. And I got more than I bargained for. And it wasn't aliens that really
I know
picked me
a
up.
lot of people that are doing CE5, and I just look at them like, why? There are safe races to interact with. There are some. And I have interaction with a couple of them that are safe. But there are a lot more races who are not. And people are literally taking their life in their hands by inviting these beings here. The good news is that nobody is allowed in unless Earth Defense Force has them on the approved list, and that would be Space Force now. So if the Space Force has them on the approved list, they can come in. Now, there are out of the 120 some odd on that list, there are probably a dozen of them that are still dangerous, but the rest are pretty safe. So from my point of view, knowing that, it's like, okay, I'm not going to tell you not to do it, but why? Why?
I'll just put it this way. I've spent most of my life since the three craft have picked me up trying to avoid them as best as I can. And they're really not allowing me anymore. Like they are basically every night they come out, because I work nights, and they fly around, you know. For some reason, I don't feel like they want to hurt me, the ones that are around me. Um, but there are some pretty big craft, I'll put it that way. And then they have like scout craft that fly around in the lower in the atmosphere. Um,
I don't even go out and look.
yeah.
Um, they, I just, I don't want to deal with it. I have trouble sleeping at night.
Hmm.
There are ships that go over between 3 and 4 a.m. and they usually make themselves sound like the old school helicopters, the
Yep.
one, the wolf ones. But
Most of the time they're dead silent for me, but sometimes they'll make a
well,
hell,
it's
you hear
because
a
I'm
helicopter.
not going outside, they're making the noise. They want me to know that I'm there, that they're there, and that they can affect me at any time they want. And I try really hard to not be paranoid about it, but
Yeah.
I would just as soon just live like a regular human if they would
See,
let me.
I spent most of my childhood looking into the stars
I
until
did in
after
my
that.
childhood, but not
Yeah.
now.
And then after that happened, I just stopped looking into the stars and just started looking at the ground, you know.
Once I got my memories of space back in 2013, a lot of my life changed dramatically, and I'm not the same as I was before. And last summer, I read a book at a friend's house, and it started my altars shifting uncontrollably. So I shift, and they don't all share memory. So I end up watching my videos just to know what I said, because I'm held accountable for what I say in these videos.
Hmm.
So I have to watch them myself to know what I'm accountable for. And it's frustrating to go from being a single person, which is what I thought I was up until 2013, to being not in control of who's interacting with in my body. And it's getting worse all the time. Um, and if I disappear from the public eye, that may be why, because I'm to the point where I have no control over who's in front. I did a recent interview with someone who was hostile, and I blew up at her. And people who follow me made comments on where she posted it about how that they had never seen me be that nasty before. And it was, her hostility brought out a defender altar.
Hmm. I watched it.
Yeah. Um, I've watched it. I don't think I was as bad as I've caught myself being real world. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, it was probably the worst I've been in a video. So yeah,
I
I'm
could tell you got frustrated when you were talking to her because she wants to go with one line of point of view, and you're trying to explain things on your end, you know. So
well, I'm aware that my view of the world is different from most other people's.
yeah.
But it gets frustrating to have people put words in my mouth or
Hmm.
deliberately twist what I'm saying.
Yeah.
or
Well,
or deliberately pretend they don't understand. You know, I'm
it's
very hard at clarity.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's like when somebody is interviewing you and you're trying to explain from your point of view what you witnessed and what you saw and what you learned,
Mm-hmm.
instead of trying to be like that, they should just say, okay, well, what then? What? Okay, basically how you interview people. I actually like the way you interview people. It's a lot easier, because most people, if you talk to them about it, or if you just watch others interviews, they're always, like I keep saying, trying to find out about the technology and what they can use, and it's mainly for the age regression. How can we save ourselves from dying, that kind of stuff. Or it's
Well,
their point of view isn't right because these people are evil, so you're
what
wrong.
one thing people need to understand is that everybody out there is just like everybody here.
Hmm.
Nobody is going to tell you, I'm the fucking bad guy.
Yeah.
Seriously. I've seen men who beat the holy shit out of their women and children, and they don't ever admit that they're the bad guy. It's always, well, they made me do it. Everybody out there has that same mentality of, we're only doing this because we have to. We're only doing this because we had no other solution to this problem. We have these needs, and this is the only way we know to fill them. Nobody out there is saying they're the bad guys. Everybody
Mhm.
is saying we're the good guys. We just have these problems that we have to solve.
See, for me, I don't remember ever saying anything other than, if I didn't follow orders, you're going to follow orders whether you like it or not. So I basically kowtowed like a coward and followed orders and did what I was told.
One of the things that I learned in my 5 years at Langley, and I got there as a 4-year-old, one of the things that they taught me very clearly was death is not an option. You will do what you were told to eventually. You might as well do it first try.
Or suffer and then do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're still going to do it whether you suffer first or not.
Hmm.
And the consequences for disobedience were unpleasant at best.
So,
And usually you were made to do worse things if you revolted. And I was quite the order follower. Um, I do have a personal issue with honor. If
mhm.
I am dishonored, I will never forgive you. And there are people in this community who have deliberately dishonored me, and I will never forgive them. And they will never be on my show. I will never interact with them willingly. And that's my personal honor standard. And it has nothing to do with whether or not they're telling the truth or not. It's they dishonored me. They are
Mhm.
not worthy of my attention. And there are going to be a lot of people who are going to hear that and go, oh, fuck, she's a badass. No, I was modified with Draco DNA before I was born. And this is a Draco reaction. You will treat me with honor or I will have nothing to do with you, period.
Mhm.
And that's why I was in trouble when I was in the German fleet, was because they have a cultural thing of they find something about you that gets to you, and that will become your nickname.
See, I don't remember them having a name for me. I was just ordered to do stuff. Like, they never even called me anything that I remember. It was just,
My
you know,
nickname was Miskabert.
yeah.
It translates into abortion that lived. That's what they called me instead of my name. Hey, Miskabert, come do this. And I had to answer to it. And after a while, I would get pissed. And they would have something happen to them because I have abilities out there. The abilities that I have now are behind a firewall where I have to believe that my life's in danger. Some of them I have access to. I'm telepathic. But if I want to blow up electronics, I have to believe my life's in danger. I have access to weapons on weapons platform in orbit. But to access it, I have to believe that my life is in danger.
Do you think it's connected to maybe the adrenochrome, like the adrenaline pumping?
No, I think
Concept,
this
maybe?
was the CIA thought that was a safety feature.
Well, no, I mean, like, for our abilities and stuff, do you think that has a connection, maybe? Because I notice when I get scared, like, I have adrenaline rushes, and like, if I feel like either someone else's life is in danger or my own is in danger, I have abilities to do things that normally I wouldn't be able to do.
I have been talking with other people in the community, and those who have navigator skills, the ability to take physical objects into hyperspace and bring them back. That's a navigator.
I know, yeah.
Navigators have adrenal issues.
Okay.
It seems to be that the genetic component to that ability ties into the adrenal gland, and having that ability, the DNA for it messes with the function of the adrenals. And all of us that I've met, one exception. Okay, there's one man that does not have adrenal issues. And so I'm talking about 8 people, which is really a small sample size. Okay, so out of 8 people that I know who have this ability, one of them does not have an adrenal issue. So that's yes, it's a small sample size, but at the same time, that's an outrageous percentage.
Yeah, well, you guys are a rarity. Let's put it that way. To my recollection, people that are human like yourself that flew ships are a rarity.
Yeah,
So
most of the navigators are ET.
yeah.
In the German fleet, most of the navigators are either Draco or Greys, Zetas. Those are who the navigators are. And there are very few humans who can do it. And those of us who can are basically trapped. There is no escape. Oberkommando told me that if I die here on Earth, that they will redial, which is time travel, back to just before I die, and they will take me to Mars and put me in regen, and that I will live on Mars as long as they can still regenerate me. And they thought this was going to be reassuring and comforting.
Yeah.
My reaction was, oh my God, I'm never going to be free.
Always going to be enslaved. How does it? Are you happy? You don't have to die. Fucking bastards, man. Oh man, it's just just the realization that it's never going to stop.
I was told this about a year ago, and people have wondered, why has she been so depressed? It's because I've been informed I'm never going to be free of this shit. Never, never.
Yeah.
You know, as long as they can regenerate the body, I'm stuck. It's like, why?
Which is, you know, it's just like, oh, dude, it's so weird, you know.
And it's just because I can navigate a ship.
I'll tell you right now, they get really pissed when you use your abilities in front of people. Like, and especially if you do it in a situation that you could have walked away from.
Oh, I was at a conference, and I'm not going to tell you who my victim was because he's public and people would know. But there was this guy, and every time he would go past me at the conference, he was in his mind, you know, thinking only. He was saying, she's a LARPer. She's just a fangirl. Mm-hmm. So he's on this panel with a bunch of guys that are talking consciousness stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he's sitting there and he's drunk. So I made telepathic contact.
Mm-hmm.
And I started talking to him while he was up there. And I ended up with the giggles because he was drunk. And I'm sitting next to Lou, and Lou's looking at me and looking at him and realizing what I've done. And it was we had, I guess we had telepathic conversation for close to an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And the panel was done, and I see him outside afterwards, and I go, oh, by the way, I'm not in your head anymore. And he goes, thank you.
So you know how I know that?
And what he told me was, I never felt you come in. I never felt you leave, but I could hear every word clearly. And I said, well, that's because I was trained by the Draco. You don't stomp in their heads. You stomp in their heads and they will squish you.
Oh, yeah.
You learn to do it right. But he has treated me with the utmost respect ever since.
Out of every group of species that I've met, the Draco are the most dangerous ones that I've dealt with, and I'm afraid of them 100%. And anybody that says that they're not is lying through their teeth. They are. I'm pretty sure that they have a good side. Don't get me wrong. I'm afraid of them because I have memories of, you know, being killed by them, or physically in real time as a kid having one show up in front of me. You know.
Okay. I have good memories of the Draco.
Yeah.
It's the Jahami. They're They are the major race that humanity calls Anunnaki.
Yeah.
Those people used loosely, are the most dangerous that I have ever encountered. They're deceitful. They will lie to you to your face. They will make deals that they have no intention of honoring, and they will act like they're your friend and then knife you in the back. I've had them try to kill me on more than one occasion, where the Draco, if they tell you they're going to do something, you can take it to the bank.
See, what really sunk it in for me was when you talked about the council, and when you talked about standing in front of that scenery where you're stuck there looking at one mountain and the sun and some background, and you can't move. And you're there for a very long fucking time. When you said that, I was like, no fucking way. I was like, oh,
Yes,
because
same way.
I was there. And the crazy part is there was a dude that shows up. See, I was in a council room. So, and this is what added on was when we spoke about Ishtar. Okay. And I started getting memories back from before that happened, where I was in front of the council, and they were going to judge me for something. I don't remember what the fuck I did, but it wasn't good. And I had asked, well, can I call a witness at least? Because I'm thinking of like a human court where you could have a witness come and stand by you and either talk about what you've done good, or if they were there. And they actually kind of laughed about it and were like, yeah, sure. Who do you want to bring as a witness? And I was sitting there trying to think, and I couldn't think of anybody, but one name popped up, which was Commander Ashtar. So I spoke up and said, I would like to call Commander Ashtar as a witness. And they were like, who's Commander Ashtar?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And and when I said that, they were like, who's Commander Ashtar? And they didn't know who the fuck I was talking about. And then they sat there and were like, one of them had popped up and approached me and was like, well, do you mind if I can look inside, if they could look inside my mind?
Mm-hmm.
And they asked for permission to find out who I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And they did. And they said, they kind of smirked, and everybody in the council that was there knew who they were talking about. And they were like, okay. And they brought him to the council, in front of the council, as a witness. And she, or he, what I thought was a he, had stated to me that before I left, that if I ever needed her, or if I never ever needed him, that he would be there to help me.
Mm.
And when he did show up, we were talking, and he basically let me know this is the last time that he was going to help me. And he basically stood up and said everything I did when I was aboard their craft, all the good things I did. And they still stated that the good things that I did does not outweigh what I did wrong. I believe that they were going to basically kill my soul, destroy me completely, from what I remember. And instead they chose to, torture me until I learned my lesson through standing there for that long length of time. And when I did, I remember getting around it, because they did it to me 3 times until I lost my shit and freaked out. But there was an individual that was there. It was a male figure that showed up, brought me to this location, wherever this location is. I don't even know, honestly. But I was standing there. I couldn't move. And they had sat there and told me that I was going to be there for a length of time. And then they disappeared. And for some reason, what I did is I would look at the scenery and basically tell myself in my head in a monotone voice, this is a beautiful scene.
Mm-hmm.
This is a beautiful scene. You're getting sleepy. You're getting scared. And
Don't
when
do
I
that.
did
I'll go
that,
to sleep.
yeah. So when I did that, for some reason, it allowed time to pass fast, as if it was minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So the individual showed back up.
When they condemned me, they had me inside a machine that was for the interrogation of extraterrestrials. And they were stripping off my altars, recording the memory from the altar, and then destroying the altar. their intention was to destroy me as a soul permanently. And after they destroyed 2 altars that way, the Germans in space showed up to rescue me. And they lost a ship in the military battle. And to this day, I wonder why the Germans thought I was worth losing a ship. I'm grateful that they rescued me, don't get me wrong. But that confusion, because I was a miscabert, why would they want me? Why would they go to that kind of trouble?
Well,
So,
I believe it's because
that
you're
that
a rarity and a navigator for one, and they don't
well,
like.
that has been why I decided to look deeper into my memories with the Germans, that there had to be more to what was going on there than I surface remembered before that. That was in the summer of 2018. And so I spent a lot of time after that going deeper into those memories to understand the German culture that I spent so much time in. And that's why I have a different point of view about them than a lot of the other people do, is because the people I thought they were before that would not have rescued me.
Yeah.
So they proved to me they were not who I thought they were. So they deserved a second look. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And there are people out there who are just absolutely mortified that I'm giving them that benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think if I've got this timed correctly,
I think we
we
went a little
have
too.
about 5 more minutes. So is there anything that you want to shamelessly plug?
Not really, honestly. I don't have anything. Um, I just want to let people know, just keep up what you're doing. If you're coming out and talking, just don't stop, because that's what's really actually changing stuff. Straightforward. And had people like yourself and others not come out before me, I wouldn't even have this opportunity. So don't think talking about it doesn't make a difference. It does. And I know that it feels like it's not making a difference, but it is. And it's even forcing them to release technology that they didn't want to release, whether they like it or not, because now it's out there and they want to make profit off of it. And with the release of that technology comes the release of questions that
Lots
need
of
to be answered. And now they're having to answer them. And I don't think they're ready, but it doesn't matter.
Now, there's a lot of technology that's been released since I came public. I was not the first one to talk about most of them, but some of my early interviews, I do talk about the technology that was used out there, and most of those things have been released since, at least in their early forms. And other people who came public the same time that I did, Tony Rodriguez, um, Ileana the Star Traveler, some that are no longer public, Jason Rice and Kevin Trammell. Um, we all talked about these things, and they're coming public now.
Mm-hmm.
So patents have been released. So yeah, some of
Well,
that's making a difference.
I've noticed websites of individuals are starting to piece together stories and newspaper articles and stuff on the pedophilia from the CIA and other groups now. And they're starting to put them together as a roadmap. And I think that's what's going to be the death blow to these people, because it's showing the hypocrisy of them not going to jail for their crimes and they're just getting released.
I've seen some of those roadmaps, and some of them are very much not correct, based on my own research into those groups. Because I've been trying to figure out who was behind it. Where did this stuff come from? Where did mind fracture come from? I was in a order when I was in Nacht Waffen, and where did the Germans get that occult knowledge? These are the questions I've been researching. Well, everybody else has been worrying about politics and religion. I've been worrying about, well, you should be able to track this historically. Where was it? Who was it? When was it? And some of the conclusions that some of these writers have come up with, I really have trouble with.
I'm only talking about one so far that I've stumbled across, but they're actually showing documentation, like actual documentation of children fingering these people, like 50 kids fingering somebody who molested them and kept them in cages and shit.
Yeah.
And them walking out of the courtroom free of charge, no charges, nothing. Or they're finding hair follicles.
Give me a link to that website, and I'll post it with when I upload this to my YouTube. I'll post it in.
I don't remember it. I'm going to try to find it.
Okay,
But
find me that, and I'll post it with it. So
okay.
I think we are at the time that the radio show allows, and I will be sending this to the producer so it can be aired over Global Enlightenment Radio Network, and I will be uploading it to my own YouTube, Nacht Waffen Pilot with Penny Bradley. So thank you for coming.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
I don't think this will be our last one, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
No problem. All right.